So when exactly do we start talking about the late Roman Empire? According to the most common consensus among the historians, it follows the ascension of the Emperor Diocletian in 284 AD, after the turbulent period known as the crisis of the 3rd century. Diocletian came to power in a way typical for the so-called soldier emperors, through a coup and a military battle against his rivals. It would be Diocletian and his faithful realization that would dominate the Roman Empire in the following century, which was plagued by endless bickering, internal divisions and external incursions into the empire. That realization was simple. Rome couldn't be successfully ruled by one man. The current empire and the situation it was in was too big, and it has outgrown any potential singular ruler. So after he took power, he decided to share it, appointing military officer Maximian as his co-emperor. Contrary to popular belief, this division didn't really originate or be intended as a separation of territory. It was meant more as a delegation of the emperor's numerous and overwhelming obligations. The two emperors resided in different parts of the empire, sure, but often cooperated and met, even though Diocletian was clearly the senior partner in this arrangement. While this dual rulership, diarchy, bore many fruits, it failed to resolve the continuous troubles the empire faced: the threatening barbaric tribes, a tense relationship with Persia, and attempts at usurpation and territorial secession led Diocletian to expand current system into Tetrarchy, the rulership of 4. Each of the two emperors with the title of Augustus received a co-ruler of a lower rank, a Caesar. Maximian in the west was joined by Constantius from Moesia, while Diocletian partnered with Galerius from Dacia. Both were military officers of an elite rank. Despite the clear hierarchy within the quartet according to seniority, the system's propaganda was designed to give the appearance of a unified body that would be further legitimized by divine heritage. To additionally stabilize the Tetrarchy, each Caesar became son-in-law to his senior ruler and was also adopted into his household. Within the Tetrarchy, the state legislation was unified, as laws were put forth in the name of all 4 rulers. In the same manner, military victories of each ruler were victories of the whole group. But each ruler was still assigned his own territory, in which he was the supreme military commander and judge. They had at their disposal their own separate treasuries, named their own officers and dignitaries, and maintained their own court in one of the capitals of their territories. The emperors of the First Tetrarchy were supposed to occasionally gather to discuss state affairs and celebrate important events, but these meetings were actually really rare, as we have records of only 2 confirmed such meetings. At first, the system seemed to work. The 4 emperors continued to cooperate. With the enlarged army, they achieved great military successes against both external and internal threats. The further division of provinces and the separation of military and civil administrations made new usurpations practically impossible. This, however, came at the cost of increased taxes and a more ruthless state apparatus, which put a heavy pressure on ordinary citizens, craftsmen, traders, and so on. Under Diocletian, Christians were also hunted with renewed fervor, though not all emperors prioritized it, especially Constantius. After another decade of seemingly stable government, the differences between the rulers, fed by their personal ambition and in anticipation of Diocletian's planned retirement, grew into disagreements and even rivalries. Consequently, the borders between the 4 territories, which were supposed to be only of administrative nature, became more solid political borders. Upon his retirement, Diocletian had to basically force Maximian to resign together with him. Meanwhile, Galerius in particular wanted to increase his influence and power, even succeeding in getting the 2 new Caesars to be picked according to his liking, while he and Constantius became the new Augusti. With this act, however, Galerius skipped over 2 other serious candidates for the titles of Caesar. Those were Constantius' son Constantine and Maximian's son Maxentius. A period of tense politicking, scheming, and power plays followed, but the final push over the edge was caused by the death of Constantius and the consequent choosing and rearranging the new members of the Tetrarchy. This series of events brought the empire into another civil war. This was not resolved until Diocletian was called from retirement, and the emperors of all kinds, both old and new, legitimate and not, convened at the conference in Carnuntum in 308. The latest, fourth attempt at Tetrarchy also failed soon after, as there were once again more powerful candidates than were spots available. Additionally, the title of Caesar was soon dropped and all emperors called themselves Augustus. A new civil war erupted, though it was really a continuation of the previous one. In its aftermath, two men stood on top, Constantine as the emperor in the west, while Licinius, a protege of the deceased Galerius, became the emperor in the east. The two signed the Treaty of Mediolanum, present-day Milan, establishing an alliance between them solidified by the marriage of Constantine's sister with Licinius. The two also agreed on a unified state policy towards religion and a tolerant, even positive view on Christianity, though Licinius would later distance himself from it. This was a big shift in the era and for the entire empire, from Diocletian's persecution of Christians and the relationship between a senior Augustus and a junior Caesar as that of Jupiter and his son Hercules, to Constantine's tolerant policy that was already started by his father. The civil war and its conclusion meant the overall failure of the Tetrarchy as a system of government in favor of a dynastical system. When Licinius defeated the last remaining struggling member of a former Tetrarchy, he also slew all family members of previous Tetrarchs that were taking refuge there, including Diocletian's wife and daughter. Despite the alliance, the two emperors were far from friendly towards each other and had reportedly incompatible character. The crisis point emerged in Italy, which was controlled by Constantine but was claimed by Licinius. After an attempt at a diplomatic solution failed and a conspiracy against Constantine was unearthed, a new war was inevitable. This was additionally sparked by the destruction of Constantine's statues and depictions at Imola, the most northeastern city of Italy, by the order of Licinius. Constantine came up on top, expanding his territory into Moesia and Pannonia. This division marked future separation of the empire until the end of the 4th century, with the Western Balkan most often falling into the western half. After the war, Constantine spent most of his time in Illyricum, both protecting his territory and at the same time threatening Licinius from any hostile acts. In a similar way, Licinius spent a lot of time in Thracia. The two emperors also fought a war of propaganda against each other, as well as campaigning against the barbarians on the other side of the Danube. Their mistrust would eventually reach a breaking point and began another war in 324, caused by Constantine and his army crossing into Licinius' territory in one of these campaigns. Constantine defeated Licinius in both land and sea battle at the Bosporus, followed soon by his surrender. Before the end of the year, Constantine ordered building a new city at Byzantium that would bear his name, Constantinople. By the spring, he had both Licinius and his son executed in Thessalonica, and Constantine became the sole emperor of the Roman Empire without any challengers. With 2 decades of military victories behind him and now firmly secured on the throne, Constantine became more and more of an autocratic ruler. After his victory, he was depicted wearing a diadem. He implemented extremely severe and harsh punishments for crimes and worsened the legal position of women. This also applied to his family, as he ordered his eldest son and wife executed. The background for this family tragedy remains unclear, ranging from suppressing a potential coup to a secret love relationship. Some would even cite their execution as the reason for Constantine's acceptance of Christianity, as it was the only religion offering him redemption from murdering family members. Constantine became the first Christian Roman emperor. The exact time of his conversion isn't clear, the traditional story being that he received a vision before one of the battles for the throne, after which he won and credited the victory to the Christian god. But from another point, his father also provided the most tolerant view of the Christians during his time in the Tetrarchy, and supposedly his mother was already Christian and he adopted her faith. Whatever the case, he wasn't baptized until he was lying on his deathbed. As for his foreign policy, he sought to campaign against Persia before his final illness, supposedly wanting to protect Christians living there and in the border region. And so, the first Christian Roman emperor was prevented from also launching the First Crusade. As for the European barbarians across the frontier, Constantine built a couple of large bridges over the Rhine and Danube to inspire both awe and terror against the tribes, with a possible swift and sudden retaliation against any hostile action. It also increased traffic across the border, spreading the Roman influence. Constantine's last will was that his 3 sons and 1 nephew would rule the empire in a similar fashion as old Tetrarchies. But that wish died soon after Constantine, as his heirs fell out in a similar manner as the old Tetrarchs did, and the similar chaos of war, politicking, and uprisings followed. All these internal conflicts cost the empire many resources that could have been used to mitigate the growing pressure of barbarians on the Roman frontier, as well as the Persians in the east. In the following years, it's worth pointing out the accessions of Constantius II, son of Constantine, and after him Julian the Apostate, who both rose as sole rulers of the entire empire. The latter was the last non-Christian emperor of Rome and the last of Constantine's dynasty. After his disastrous march on Persia, death, and a humiliating defeat, the throne was taken by Jovian, who in his short rule managed to arrange a treaty with Persia and the retreat of the Roman army. After him, the throne seemed free for the taking. It would appear to modern eyes that after more than 800 years, during which every consul and emperor of Rome seemed to have, at least on the surface, refused to be associated with the title of a king, Constantine certainly wasn't afraid to appear as one. The first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire brought stability to the state plagued by wars. But as it would turn out, his dominant rule would only be a small reprieve for a dying empire. If you want to learn about the first emperor, Augustus, click on the next video or link in the description below. Be sure to like, subscribe, you know how YouTube works, and I will bring you more history soon.